Hello and welcome to the Blackout Podcast, where I get to talk to amazing people who do amazing things. And today, my guest is Shawna Garrett, the president and CEO of EduNova. Thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I remember there was a post on LinkedIn. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I saw EduNova and then your website. I love your website, how it has all these squares of the many, many, many things EduNova does for international students. I'm like, you know what? I want to find out more. So thanks for coming today. And what is EduNova?
So EduNova is a nonprofit cooperative. We are made up of education providers in Nova Scotia. So we do essentially education and training. So we are made up of all of the universities in Nova Scotia, the public college system, so NSCC, K-12, so all of the students that are in, right from kindergarten up to grade 12, and language schools.
Oh, wow.
So essentially what we do is we support, they're our membership, and we support them in the recruitment and retention of international students. So essentially what we're doing is supporting them to be successful. And then, of course, supporting international students that want to come to Nova Scotia to study, stay, live, thrive, and have the experience of their lives.
Right. How did you get to start working with EduNova? And, yeah.
Well, if I think back, it's probably down to my love of travel. That's probably where it started.
Oh, okay.
So when I was in university, I did a study abroad experience in Japan.
Oh my God, that's like my dream country.
Yes, right? So lived with a Japanese family, studied Japanese, learned the culture, taught English, and then I came back, graduated from university, then went back to Japan for 3 years, and I worked in a corporate sales division for a foreign language institute.
Right.
Sharp, Sony, Hitachi, Tachibana, all, Autodesk, cool Japanese companies teaching English. Traveled all around Southeast Asia, had a fabulous experience, came back, did some work in Canada, but again, had the bug.
I'm going to travel again.
Going to travel again, went to China, lived in China for 3 years. I was a high school principal there.
Wow.
For British Columbia High School. Taught, coached soccer, taught psychology.
Holy smokes.
Fabulous experience. Came back, did some work, worked at NSCAD for a little while, and then went to the Middle East. I went to Qatar. And I lived there for 5 years. And I was the registrar at College of the North Atlantic there. There's a Newfoundland College, that's over in the Middle East. Learned loads and loads about the Middle East, politics, all of language, being Muslim, Islam, learned so much about religion, politics, culture. Absolutely had a fabulous experience, came back. And I think if I think about it, all of those experiences, being an international student or a learner or a minority in other countries, made me, empathize and feel for our international students here in Nova Scotia. I know what it's like to be the other, and want to make sure I'm working for a place that aligns with my values, which is helping international students succeed abroad. Also, I was on the founding board of EduNova back in 2004.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. So full circle for you.
So full circle. So on the founding board, was a board member for many years, loved the organization, loved what they did, and then did my travel, and then came back kind of, like you say, full circle, and now I'm president and CEO.
So you're going to travel again, or?
Well, COVID has put a big dent in travel. But the world has changed so much with the pandemic.
Mm.
A lot of what we did do was, taking missions of people and going to different countries to visit high schools and see guidance counselors and do education fairs abroad.
Mm.
That's changed a lot. So now what's happened is there are education agents that are in these other countries. They always were there, but there's been an increased reliance on them. So now we're doing a lot of training of agents that are living and working abroad
Oh,
that are sending students to Nova Scotia.
okay.
So a little bit of some changing dynamics there. There is still travel happening, absolutely.
Mhm.
But the other thing that's happened is there's a lot more attention being placed on retention of international students once they get here.
Mm.
So now we do have, back when I started in international student recruitment, when I was at Acadia, that was my first kind of foray into it. There weren't as many international students in Nova Scotia as there are today. It has increased dramatically.
Mhm.
So universities are doing quite a good job of recruiting international students. Some people might argue too good. But now there's a lot of focus on keeping them here,
Mhm.
supporting them, ensuring that they have all of the wraparound supports, and then helping them transition into their career, into their workforce,
Mm.
and educating employers on what global talent we have right here in our backyard. I
Mm.
think that sometimes gets missed. So we're funded by ACOA, the provincial government, and our membership. So there's a lot of
Oh, yeah,
attention
the
being
members, the
the members that
schools.
our
Yep.
schools pay a
Right, right.
membership fee to a cooperative. So essentially, they want to make sure that we're really supporting the international students when they come here.
Mm.
So we started a study and stay program 7 years ago, and that program is designed entirely to support international students in their final year of university or college,
Oh.
as the case may be.
Mm.
So there's one of your questions that talks about data and metrics. So if you take a look at StatsCan data for 2021, only 11% of students that come to Nova Scotia graduate, get their PR within 5 years. National average is about 25%,
Oh, that's low.
well below national average. So something going on there.
Right.
Of course, part of it has been historically. Students have gone to other provinces, Ontario for jobs, Alberta for jobs, but increasingly, Nova Scotia's got jobs.
Mm.
So how do we get international students ready and knowing about those jobs and with the network and the supports that they need to get those jobs? So that's what this program has been designed to do. So we have all of our students. So in the final year, we work with 100 students that are part of this program. There's a selection process. They're all matched with a mentor, one-on-one,
Mm.
in their field of study. So if they want to go into IT, tech, healthcare, whatever it is, we match them up. They open doors, they help them with resume writing, they help them with interview skills. We do workshops, we do immigration workshops. We have programs to make sure that they have all of the supports that they need.
Mm.
That if you have the privilege of being from Nova Scotia and you grew up with your parents' friends, your friends, all of these networks, they come here, they don't have those.
Mhm.
So we're trying to help them create those so that they can stay, if they want to stay, of course, and succeed. So this program over the last 7 years has a retention rate of 86%
That's
students
crazy,
that are
actually.
staying
Holy shit.
and living in the province
Wow.
and working in their field of study post-graduation.
What does the program do that it does so well at? 86 is high, high, high,
Wild,
high.
hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, so one thing is it's iterative. So every single year, we're listening to the students, like, what do you need? What's happening? So it starts with research. So we know that students want networking. We know they need a mentor. They know, we know from what they tell us, they don't know how to do interviews, resume writing. So we've tried to create the workshops, the supports, the activities, the events that they need to be successful. So we do networking nights. So we have, different employers in, network with the students, meet them. We do retreats. So we take them down to Cornwallis and we do a full 2 days of programming,
Wow.
personal branding, how to brand yourself, how to write resumes. And then, of course, all the networking. We have people come in, meet the students. So we do networking nights, retreats. We have a BEST conference. So BEST is building employment for successful transitions. So we do all kinds of,
Oh.
workshops on how to transition into the workforce, how to
Mm.
be successful once you get your job. And then, of course, the mentoring. Often they're working one-on-one with a mentor every week
Mm.
or every couple of weeks. And that mentor is just, walking them through, have you done this? Have you done that? Let me introduce you to this person. Let me introduce you to that person.
Mm.
How to use LinkedIn, how to connect, how to network in this culture.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes it's distinctly different than the culture that they came from. And they're kind of like, what
What
is
is
happening
going-
here?
Yeah.
What is going on?
And winter, and winter.
And then winter happens,
Yeah.
And so there's somebody there that's able to explain, this is what's happening, this is what's going on.
Right.
Yes, you might have not had your first successful interview. What happened? Let's walk through it. Let's focus on ways to be successful. So I think it's all of those supports, it's the research, and then it's knowing that we have to constantly change this program because
Mm.
the world changes so fast.
Mm.
The immigration pathways change, immigration regulations change. It's just a constant, things are moving. So we're always moving and changing and making, the supports dynamic
Mm.
for those students.
You mentioned something, and I think to myself, like, I mean, when I'm filling out a survey, I'm like, whatever. But the program works because you are somehow getting the participants to actually say what they want. How are you that successful?
Well, in getting them to say what they want,
Mm.
well, I think, over the last 7 years, there's been a trust built
Right.
between international students and EduNova.
Mm.
They know we're here for them. We know we're their advocates. We know we are their allies. I think we've done that through, supporting now over 400 students, and they're all in their own communities, and they share the word. This is
I
a
use
good
this
place to
program,
go.
yeah.
This is a good program. You can trust them. This is legit. A legit way for you to be able to stay in this province if that's what you want.
Mm.
So, and the other thing is they want to pay it forward for other international students. So essentially we create an alumni association for all of those students,
Oh, yes.
and they then become the mentors because they were so impacted and helped by their mentor. It's kind of like, yeah, let me pay back, let me pay it forward. And there's a community. So, we had a mentor appreciation event this week.
Oh, wow.
So we got everybody together, had some snacks, shared some stories, and just told them how much we appreciate the work that they do because they're all volunteers, and this program would not run without all of those volunteers. Like, we could not do what we do. So we want to make sure they're appreciated and that they're coming back and they're, continuously helping other international students. But one thing that I love that I hear, because I'm always thinking how appreciative I am of the mentors remind me, hey, listen, I'm getting as much out of this as because they're teaching me new language, new culture. I know that I have a place to go visit in the world, their family, so it's this whole wonderful ways that those students give back to them. And they feel so proud, they graduate and, they get a job and, there's this real feeling of pride and joy for helping these students. So I think it's not only thanking the mentors, but the mentors are thanking the students for everything that they bring to their lives. So it's kind of a circle, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, so I was going to ask what happens when they, I guess, get the job or whatever. but this alumni is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful addition to EduNova. And I mean, it must be great for the participants. I can imagine it myself. It's like, oh wow, I use this program, it helped me. So because now when you see an international student who've been there before, you know what that experience is like. You're like, I did this, and it also makes sense why that 87%.
Stays.
Yeah, it explains it a lot. So, you say COVID changed some things. Well, apart from the travel, what are
Mm.
some other things that changed?
Well, there's a few things that have changed. One is, and there's more than a few. I'm sure we're going to be feeling the impacts of the changes of COVID for years and years.
Mm,
One thing is impact of online learning.
mm,
That has really impacted students, especially international students that were in their first year, in India or in the Bahamas or wherever they were. Um, they had a whole different experience than if they came in person and went through orientation and did all of the things and met all of their friends.
mm.
So online learning has impacted their learning experience. Um, Mental health
Oh, yes.
and online learning has been a part of that, and not having community and not making friends. But all of the stress of the pandemic has had a major impact on international students.
Mm.
And then we have health supports in Nova Scotia, but most of them aren't culturally distinct,
You know, yeah, that's something I
right?
actually never thought of until you mention it now, because mental health is universal, it's global, but how I, as like I'm from Nigeria and someone that is from here,
Yeah,
might have different
right?
experiences of, say, I'm not gonna go and tell a therapist that this happened and stuff, but over time you understand why that is useful. But culture is like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're going to go to a therapist that has no idea about your culture, your country, your background. So you're going to go and have a conversation, and then you're going to spend like 3 hours trying to explain to them, no, it's not really like that, because where I'm from, this is what we think about mental health supports or psychology or
Mm,
no. So what the students are saying to us is, there's not really anywhere that they can go with somebody that gets where they're from, and all
right.
of the cultural or religious or political context of what they're experiencing here.
Mm,
And then there's all kinds of, there's homesickness, there's all kinds of things mixed in, which really most of our mental health supports are not customized to do.
mm.
So then they're sort of alienated because they actually get up the nerve to talk to somebody, and they're just like, yeah, they don't get it.
Mm,
So I stopped. So then they're even more alienated. So that's how I really think there's been an impact with COVID in that way. And then in addition to COVID, there's been climate crises. So
oh,
we're actually in a climate crisis right now. A lot of our students are worried about that. But then if you think about Hurricane Fiona, we had hundreds and hundreds of international students impacted, lost their apartment, lost their laptop, had a fire, and they're not eligible for any provincial government support. They're not eligible for
oh
Red Cross
yeah, because they
support.
just have a study permit.
They're on a study permit. They're not
Right.
eligible for any of those supports. So what we've done is we went to the government and said, hey, could you help us support these students? Because the 211 calls were directed to us. So we're getting calls of students saying,
Oh,
I only have one night in a apartment from the Red Cross, but then I'm on my own. I have no food. I have nothing. It was early fall. They just arrived, some of these students in their first year.
mm.
So we went to try to and we asked the government, and they said, no, they're not eligible because of the
God
fact that
damn.
they're on a
Yeah,
study
yeah,
permit,
yeah.
right? So we went to a private donor, got money, and put it out there to all of the universities. And within 48 hours had close to 400 applicants that met the criteria,
Oh
that
my
were in
God.
dire need
Right.
of financial assistance. So the world is changing, and the climate crisis is one of those things, and that's not going to stop. I mean, there's only, we're seeing flooding, we're seeing hurricanes. So what's going to happen to our international students that aren't eligible for those supports, right?
I mean, with the advocacy work, do you think there is any, I guess, I mean, it's not even changing what you can do based on the permit you have, but this is a very special circumstance, Do you think that there might be some change or some addition for circumstances like that?
Well, the one body that I've spoken to this about thus far is the federal government, so Global Affairs Canada, and they heard. I think they heard that message. I'm going to advocate that that's included in their international education strategy at a national level moving forward, because that's not only going to impact Nova Scotia, that's going to impact the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to set aside some monies to be able to address, the international students that are going through these
because
climate
it's not going to
crises.
stop.
It's not going to stop.
Yeah, we're not even
Sadly.
Sadly. We are not even doing thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess what's like a typical day for you, Shawna, at work?
You know what?
It's not typical
Every day is a new adventure.
Yes.
Every day is a new adventure. Yeah. We have a fabulous team. Most of our team members are graduates of Nova Scotia universities, and they've been international students, so they understand, what it's like to need the support and what kind of supports that they need. We have team meetings. I attend government meetings. I write funding proposals. We're a little nonprofit, so I'm constantly, in order to keep the lights on, we depend on funding.
Right.
So you're writing proposals, you're seeking money for the upcoming year, you're trying to develop projects that will support your membership, support international students.
And then you're telling them how you spend that money.
Then you report on how you spend the money and the results.
Right.
Because it all is based on results, right?
I mean, 87%, hello.
Yes. Yes. And I do a load of presentations because other provinces are super interested in what we're doing here in Nova Scotia, because 86% is, it's high. So the other provinces are thinking, what are you doing? How could we do that too? So I do a lot of that. I attend a lot of conferences, workshops, making sure that we're seeing what's going on in the rest of not only Canada, but the world, because our goal is not only to be a leader in Canada, but we want to be a global leader in the international student experience. So keeping a finger on the pulse of best practices around the world, and seeing how we can be better and better and better.
Wow.
Because, as you know, Nova Scotia is looking to double population by 2060. And as our population grows, all of the wonderful parts of that, filling labor market gaps, having people employed, having full schools, having a larger tax base where there's more money, more jobs, all of those are wonderful spin-offs of population. But then there are also downsides. There's inflation. We have a challenge with affordable housing. We have challenge with food security. So how do we make sure that we're keeping in front of all of those challenges as well? Because as population grows, the challenges with more people grows. So those are on top of everybody's mind. But we also want to make sure that we're, making sure that we're communicating transparently what it's like to come to Nova Scotia. So make sure you have your apartment, your housing settled before you come.
Yes.
Those kinds of things where we're not saying, oh, come, don't worry about it.
Everything
It'll be
is here.
fine. We want to make sure that we're being responsible.
Straight up, yeah.
And straight.
Yeah, no. Okay, you know what? I have to ask you this, because you have to be really good at your presentations to, get the funding, get the point across. So how do you prepare for your presentations when you have to create one? and then when you have to actually do one?
Well, I generally start with research. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that I'm telling the story that needs to be told. So I'm always looking at creating that narrative, telling that story, because all of this is a lot of it's built on relationships and storytelling as well. So you're creating your narrative, creating your story. I love good visuals,
Oh.
and Nova Scotia is so full of such fabulous imagery and photography, and we have such wonderful environment to work with. So
Mm.
using great imagery and photography to showcase the story, writing the good story, and then of course practice, practice, practice.
I think that's the part I
Mhm.
miss.
It takes time.
Right,
It
right,
takes
right,
time,
right,
hey?
right.
Yeah.
I mean, the work EduNova is doing is great, and like I said, I really love the website and how it has like, oh, we do this, and then we make sure people settle, and we show you what happens in Nova Scotia and stuff. And how long have you been in this position now?
A year and 8 months.
Mm. And what are some things that, I mean, apart from funding, because that's always difficult, what are some other difficulties you face? Are they doing well?
Funding is one of them, and seeking funding, but also a lot of our funding is year over year funding.
I hate that. I hate that. I'm like, I'm sorry, that just came out because it's like, yeah, I think it's March. You kind of like, what the, are we, what's going to happen? And
March Madness. It's the hardest time, hey?
yes.
Because you're thinking, okay, how much money do we have? What are the proposals that have been approved?
Mm,
How much money do we have for next year? What resources can we have? Can we hire? Do we need to hire more staff? We don't have, we have so many projects right now. We don't have the staff, but we don't have the, necessarily all of the funding comes in on
mm.
time. So, there's that,
It's such a
space.
juggling act.
It is.
And you only have 1 month to do all that thing. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a little bit frustrating, actually.
It's you really have to be an entrepreneur in many ways
Mm,
in order to work in a nonprofit, because you
mm,
need to really be flexible
mm.
and adaptable,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
you can't count on things, because something that may seem like it's a solid deal, something happens, there's a change in the world, there's a strike, something happens that
Mm,
you can't plan for, but then you have to deal with. So it's that messy middle,
mm,
that messy middle, March Madness, I think
mm.
is a challenge, hey? So I think that's certainly a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, we have a very diverse team and staff, so we have to make sure our intercultural competence
Ah.
is good. We really need to be able to dig into our biases and understand one another and where everybody's coming from, because we
Mm,
have so many nationalities and religions and languages,
mm.
and all of our students are from everywhere. So we really have to be able to do that kind of examination, investigation of our own cultural
Right,
competence.
right.
So we do the IDI. So there's an intercultural development inventory,
Oh,
and we actually have our staff are trained in that, and we deliver that to our students as well, so
okay.
that they're able to dig in and understand,
Mm,
so that they're ready for the workplace, because many of them are going into a Canadian or Nova Scotian workplace.
mm,
Um, so understanding, where they're coming from and where their workplace might have differences.
mm-hmm.
So that's obviously a challenge, but it's very interesting work,
I
because you're
can
doing a lot
imagine.
of, inner speculation and growth and development, right?
No, that's
Yeah.
that's that's really cool. And you mentioned your storytelling and the narrative, and I'm like, that's why she started with I went to Japan.
Yeah.
And oh, I see
Yeah.
now. So, I mean, running such a wonderful organization must be interesting, has its own challenges, tasking a lot. How do you relax?
For me, my relaxation is often on my bike.
Oh, okay.
I love to ride my bike.
Right.
I love to walk, be in nature. So exercise for me is sort of where I get my stress release.
Mm,
Also connections with friends, with family, catching up. I find that really, really helpful to make sure, because there's good days and there's bad days.
mm.
And that there's always, you're checking in, there's somebody to talk to that you can kind of bounce things off, or ideas, or sometimes you have these amazing ideas but there's not actually the funding to make it work. And the
Right.
frustrations, like somebody to be able
I
to
need to go cycle now.
exactly that the frustrations,
Right,
we
right,
could be
right,
doing
right.
this amazing thing, but
Right.
so yeah, just finding those healthy ways to make sure you're, keeping that frustration at bay.
Mm,
And then, I mean, this part of Halifax is such a cool, I love art, I love theater, I love music, keeping on top of all of that
okay.
keeps the imagination and creativity
Yes, yes, because you
active.
need a lot of that for what you do with all the juggling. I'm gonna let you go with this question.
Mhm.
No, I mean, why do you think that international students love Nova Scotia and actually decide to stay when they're here?
We just did a really interesting project, which was a video testimonial project.
Oh,
So we had one of our graduates, our study and say graduates from each of our universities, tell us their story.
mm,
And these were all people that have decided to make Nova Scotia their home.
mm,
They didn't necessarily think that they would before they left Nigeria or Ghana or China. They decided once they got here. So in their stories, there is this common narrative of the challenges they faced.
mm,
So being lonely, leaving their family, leaving their friends, coming to a new culture, everything seems like so different, so crazy.
mm,
They didn't get into the program that they wanted, all of these challenges that they overcame.
mm,
But the common thread throughout it was that the people that are here in Nova Scotia helped them along their journey. They made
mm,
friends, they made connections. Their teachers were mentors. Their teachers saw something in them.
mm.
They graduated, they gained confidence, they became somebody new or somebody that they always were, but they weren't able to explore in the confines of
Ah,
their own family or culture. So, they became themselves.
mm,
Um, but a lot of it has to do with the people, the friendliness, the culture, some of the openness, not always the case, but some of the openness of the people here in Nova Scotia, and that has changed their lives, and they're raising families here. They're going to stay here. They're. They're permanent residents.
mm.
Um, so I think I would definitely say it's the people of Nova Scotia.
No, that's right. I can testify to that. It's like
Yeah.
Nova Scotians are just so nice. And,
Mm.
people think it's like, oh, but it is actually really true. Shawna, thank you so much for coming and sharing the beautiful work that EduNova does and giving me your time.
I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. You're a great interviewer.